I recently started playing Dark Souls games and FromSoft games in general. I've beaten Dark Souls 3, I'm halfway through Dark Souls 1. I am obsessed with Bloodborne, even though I can't get my hands on it. I've beaten Elden Ring, I have multiple characters in Elden Ring, and I love FromSoft games. Being introduced to these games and playing them has been really awesome, but this is a special case because this is the first FromSoft game I can actually play on release, and I was really excited, and I still am excited to get back going and playing this game, but I gotta hunker down and finish this video. So I genuinely have a very high regard for this game, whether a lot of people are kind of spewing a lot of hate towards these developers and being very negative online, which I think kind of really doesn't do anything. But so far, the devs have been really responsive to everything, and I think that this game has a long life to come. But before I talk about that, we need to get into the nitty-gritty of this game and why finally we can truly enjoy joyful cooperation at the best stage. Welcome to NightReign. Let's get into what most of you guys are here for. Is the game fun? Is it a good game? And for me, yes, 100%. If you like Souls combat and you enjoy playing games with your friends, this is right up your alley. I think everything that they have used to craft this game is great. I do have some complaints, but first I want to talk about the things that I genuinely really like about the game. I think the diversity of weapons is amazing, right? Basically, every single weapon from Elden Ring is ported directly into this game, and it allows you to have very diverse runs. One run, I'm using a dagger. The other one, I'm using a katana. The next, I'm using a curved sword. Like hammers, bows and stuff like that, as well as like magic you can even use on certain characters. So if you find a really cool seal with a good spell, it might be worth using. Hell, even if, it's not that great of a build. My friend was playing Raider and he found Mohg's spear, so he was just doing the blood thing, right? Because it's Mohg's spear. So stuff like that is really awesome, as well as there's multiple camps throughout the game that have a little icon on them, and in this icon, they specifically show you a elemental affinity, which allows you to kind of build fun builds. Like fire and ice builds, right, are really cool. Having a build where you're doing a bunch of holy damage and stuff like that allows for really fun runs. With these camps, I will say that there's not an insane amount of variety with the enemies you can find in these camps, but each camp is crafted very specifically. Pretty much every place of interest is crafted very specifically to help you be able to navigate these consistently and be able to become more efficient while playing the game. And also, it just really saves you a lot of time being able to discern, hey, these are the type of bosses that are going to be at these are the type of bosses that aren't going to be here, and it allows you to map out your run better. The big castle in the front has a wide variety of bosses you can find there, and one of them is the bell-bearing hunters. Are insane because they're not the bell-bearing hunters from Elden Ring. They're actually the Briar guy that you have to fight in Millicent's quest. Well, you don't have to fight, but he's there when you have to get the Millicent prosthesis. And that guy beats your ass on any given day. I don't understand why. Me and my friend Dalton, we both have sunk a lot of hours into Elden Ring and Dark Souls. He has put in a fuck ton of hours in Elden Ring. He still has trouble with this guy for some reason. Another thing that you guys want to know is, are the bosses cool? And I generally think that every boss that they have, some of them are a little bit more aggravating to fight than others. But I think genuinely, boss for boss, this absolutely bangs. And I see a lot of people are talking a lot of smack about these bosses and saying a bunch of crazy things. I personally think that these are really great bosses. I love their designs. I love their gimmicks as well. And I think it's really fun and enjoyable to fight them. Some are more difficult than others, but it adds to the challenge of that boss fight. A lot of people don't understand that that's kind of the reason why a lot of things in these Dark Souls games are very annoying. You can go to every single Soulsborne game and find something that you can point out and be like, oh, that's annoying and stupid, that sucks, yada, 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 and go on for days and days and days. But no one does that because they have their blinders on when talking about these games a lot of the time. So even me, I also struggle with that. Like, if you're talking bad about like Baldur's Gate 3 or Life is Strange or Dark Souls 1, I'm gonna be pissed. Or Bloodborne, I'm gonna be pissed, right? But realistically, there's flaws in these games, right? And NightReign suffers from that as well, like any Soulsborne game. But I don't think that should deter you from playing this game, as it's really fun. There are some insane moments, especially with the revive system, because you have to do damage. So seeing your friend come in from like dropping a raider ult, jumping off of it, and smacking down on you to res you in a boss fight is so fucking cool. It's genuinely really enjoyable. I will say that some of these bosses are far easier than others. I think that, personally, I'm not going to spoil it, but there are some bosses that I think are like peak FromSoft boss design of like, they have nice gimmick, easy to understand gimmick that is still challenging, so it still kind of pushes you, as well as how the aggro works for some of these bosses are very fun and very exciting. Now, I did put a little bit of spoilers for one of the cooler bosses in the game, but I'm not going to spoil anything from here on out. Mainly, I want to talk about the message of NightReign. A lot of you might be wondering, what do I mean by that? What message is there in NightReign? Now, there is some lore in NightReign, but definitely something that I haven't been able to fully dive in and secure, and I haven't seen anyone else on YouTube post a nice deep dive of every single remembrance and all of the little tidbits that we find throughout the game. But I think Dark Souls games, very much so from obviously Dark Souls starting, speak a lot with their gameplay and how that is designed, right? Now, in Dark Souls 1, there's a thing called hollowing, and it goes throughout the entire Souls trilogy. Hollowing is the idea of losing your purpose. It's one of the best symbolisms for depression that I've ever seen in media, and it's wonderfully executed throughout all three of those games, especially Dark Souls 1, where it takes more of a prime focus throughout the storyline. In NightReign, there's not hollowing, that would be crazy, but there is the night, right? And the night is essentially the idea of a swallowing storm that takes everything up in its path. I kind of see this as being swept up in drama or even like just bad things in general, right? Like when you say something bad about something or you sort of progress kind of a negative mindset, you always have probably heard when you were a kid, like, don't kick up a storm and stuff like that. That's kind of my idea for what this is. It is a idea and relation to everything going on in the world today and how there's so much negativity and it's really hard to drown out and push past. And I think NightReign, being one of the only FromSoft games to have, you know, this type of multiplayer experience, speaks a lot to what they're trying to say with the gameplay of this game. Now, obviously, you can be saying that I'm reaching too far into it. It's just a fun roguelike game that's just sort of a nice weird twist. But I genuinely think that the message of this game is, through everything, all of these terrible things surrounding and engulfing you, the best way to fight through it is with your friends. Again, it also perpetuates the Soulsborne message of not giving up, because truly, in Soulsborne games, you can't really lose until you quit, right? And NightReign is the same exact premise, even if it is a roguelike. You might not complete a run, but that doesn't mean you're losing. Realistically, the only way you can lose is if you give up, because if you continue yourself on your journey of pursuing whatever you want until your deathbed, you never truly lost. You never gave up. And if you don't allow the world to give you, if you don't allow the world to label you as a loser, as losing, and you make it so where you're in this perpetual state of always pushing towards your goal, it leaves you a lot more fulfilled than you could possibly think. Hell, there are people that haven't beat like the first boss the first Night Lord in NightReign, and I think it's great because it kind of shows that you can do it. And eventually, these people, if you're one of these people, you're going to beat that boss, and you are going to feel ecstatic. There's a specific boss that is a little bit difficult to deal with because of how it's designed. And it took me and my friend probably like, I want to say like 10 runs. And again, like, we are like experienced Souls players, right? So we have a lot of hours in this game, let alone with some of these new people that are coming in because of this game. And it took us a lot of tries to get it done. And it's not even that difficult of a boss fight. It's just like the way it's designed, you know? And I remember like beating it, and it gave me that Souls rush of, you know, you kind of shaky a little bit. You have that adrenaline, you know, your heart's pumping, you're kind of sweating a little bit, and you're really excited to finally have overcome that hurdle. And I think it's amazing. There's even some hurdles in this game that I have not overcome yet, including one Night 2 boss that has whooped my ass in every single game that I've played that I'm not going to spoil. So, yeah, I think NightReign is truly amazing, and I recommend everyone out there to give it a nice, clean shake. Now, I think that there are some flaws in NightReign, and I'm going to talk about that right here. I think some of the flaws are, I think some of the bosses are genuinely too easy. I think that porting some of the old bosses from the older Dark Souls games specifically, a lot of them don't really hold up. Some of them hold up really well, but a lot of them don't because you're fighting 3v1, and they didn't really do anything too crazy to them that allows you to have a fair challenge. I think that one thing that they could do realistically is pair some of these bosses with another boss from the game that is connected to them in some way. I think it'd be really cool. Slight spoiler warning, so if you don't want a spoiler for what one of these bosses are, skip like 20 seconds of the video. But they have the Dancer of the Boreal Valley in this game, and I think it'd be really cool if they paired the Dancer with Vort. I think that would be really awesome, and it would make the fight a hell of a lot more challenging, because duo fights are just more difficult, and they're not as hard as they are in base games because, of course, you have 3 people rather than 1. Another thing with these brought back bosses, there's only 6, so only 2 per Souls game. There's none for Bloodborne, which unfortunately that's just never going to happen, even though I would love to see just any Bloodborne boss in not 30 FPS, but unfortunately not going to happen anytime soon. So another thing that I talked about earlier, is kind of a lack of bosses in some areas, specifically the changing of environment areas like the mountaintop, fighting the Albinaric archers for like the 58th time. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but fighting them over and over again just kind of sucks. They're not even that hard either, so it's not something that is super crazy. On the other hand, you have the Briar guy I was talking about earlier that just absolutely mobs you. So it's kind of a real RNG of some bosses will whoop your ass and then others will be fairly easy. So obviously you're going to try and prioritize just, doing the easy stuff. And I think adding a little bit more challenge into this game would be pretty cool. And I genuinely would think I would have a lot of fun. Those are really my only complaints for this game. And I think that it does what it wants to do. It brings people together in a community to respect and remember these amazing games that we've been playing for the past, multiple decades. And it really allows you to experience, the beauty of Souls games with friends. And for that, I will be forever grateful for this game. Now, a lot of people are going to be swept up in the negative and comparing this to all these other games that FromSoft has released, but it's not like any of the other games FromSoft released. The only game that they are, going to be releasing that is going to be even remotely similar in design is going to be Duskbloods. But even then, I think comparing things is arbitrary and kind of useless. So stop comparing, stop wondering, and just have fun and play the game. For $40, this has already given me around 30 hours of gameplay, and I'm not even done with everything. And that's not including like the Remembrance quest. That's just doing the main bosses. And doing them over again, I genuinely would love to fight some of these bosses again. It's really fun. And I want all of you to please go and just enjoy some joyful cooperation, as our friend Solaire would say. And I will see all of you later. Please like and subscribe. It helps me make these videos. Peace.